Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Amanda, and my amazing co-host is...
Hello, I'm Megan.
Hey, hey, hey. So we are your source for messy, imperfect, real-world homeschool advice and community. Homeschooling is booming. We see the stats and the reports coming out, and our communities just continue to grow. But with that comes a ton of TikTokers and other influencers. It can be hard to know who to actually listen to. And honestly, even harder to find ones who aren't slipping Jesus and Bible verses into their homeschool content. So if you're looking for secular support from two veteran progressive homeschool moms who will share the amazing, but also the stressful and everything in between, you found us.
True story. Yeah, as Amanda said, we are two moms, but please know that however you present to the world, you are welcome here. We are secular, we are progressive, and that can be really challenging to find in the homeschool world. So if you've been hanging out in Facebook groups for homeschoolers and the posts are rants about how public schools are part of the communist agenda, or they've got their panties in a twist because they saw a rainbow on a book cover at the library, we feel you. We're in those groups too. But that is not the vibe here. So you can settle in and relax with us.
Right. There were the San Francisco Giants pitchers who were like, we have to put the Bible verse on our hats during the Pride game. Like, are you kidding me? Sit down. You're fine. Okay. So anyway, it can be easy to feel alone or isolated or outnumbered in those groups. But we look at the stats about homeschooling and we know that the secular and what one study we recently read referred to as liberal segments of homeschooling, they're growing faster than the segments who believe polar bears boarded an ark in the desert. So you are not alone. There are so many of us, something like 1.5 million of us in the United States. If it feels like you're the only blue dot in your very red homeschool community, you probably aren't. But either way, we're glad you found us. We're glad you're here.
Exactly. Yeah. If you've been looking for people who can see a rainbow without automatically going, God's promise, or people who didn't show up to the Orange Clowns front lawn spectacular because they just love UFC fighting so much, Nate Bargatze. If you're looking for people who will affirm that a woman should have autonomy over her own body, that a Black teenager should be able to wear a hoodie and not have it potentially cost them their lives, or that being brown or speaking Spanish doesn't inherently make you a violent criminal who should be given a one-way ticket to El Salvador, which isn't even the country you probably came from. But okay, then there was something on Fox News a number of years ago where they referred to all of Central America as Mexico at one point. So they can't even tell the difference. It's not like they realized. But anyway, you have found us. So do yourself a favor, hit follow now before we jump into today's topic so that you don't have to feel alone among the red hats at Homeschool Co-op. Again, you will know you have like-minded homeschool friends.
Yes. Yes. Look, and while we definitely have strong opinions about all kinds of things, let's be real, we like to actually support our statements. So if you would like to explore the studies that we're referring to, like when we said 1.5 million progressive homeschoolers, or maybe you're struggling to find your community, we wrote an ebook. It's like 60 pages. It's nothing crazy. It's currently available for download over on our Patreon community. The title is How to Build the Secular Progressive Homeschool Community You Wish Existed. It is just one of a ton of resources that we have built over the years that are things we wish existed when we were new and cobbling information together and honestly just trying to find our way on this crazy homeschooling journey. So in fact, over on our website, which I know it's hard to find, but it's called homeschoolmomsunfiltered.com, or you can actually just find the link in the show notes if you're open to looking at the show notes. I never want to look at the show notes. Anyway, anyone who heads over to the website can find information on all of those resources, from our books to online courses, coaching sessions, our unit studies, literally anything and everything that we have created to help you feel confident and successful while homeschooling. We have tried really hard to make you feel supported, so you know that we've got you.
Yeah, we sure do. And we just keep creating more stuff. So stay tuned. Give us a follow wherever you're listening, on social media, even over on Patreon. There's free follow options over there so you can scoop up as much Homeschool Moms Unfiltered information as possible.
Yes, because everyone wants more of us in their lives, right? I mean, anyway, so I kind of feel like I should say drum roll, please, right now. But our podcast today will ironically be about podcasts. The data ranges depending on the source, but it is estimated that anywhere from 30 to 50,000 podcast episodes are released worldwide on any given day. A single day. We're not talking a week or a month, like a single day. And that is a lot of content. Now, granted, not all of it will be kid friendly or even appropriate for your family, but it is still a lot of information being released out into the universe for consumption. Obviously, if you're here listening to us, you're generally on board with the whole idea of podcasts. But today we'll be discussing how this medium might fit into your kiddos' homeschool experience.
Yeah. And we'll also share some of our kids' favorite podcasts. So we would love for you to do the same in the comments, because with an average, let's say, of 40,000 podcasts being released daily, there's just no way to know all the amazing stuff that's out there. There are surely hidden gems out there that we're all missing. So let's cross-pollinate a little bit in the comments.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm pretty excited to see what other people have to recommend. So, where would you even begin sifting through 30 to 50,000 episodes a day? I mean, truly, it would be like, I don't know, like 25 full-time jobs or some crazy nonsense like that. So if we all share our favorite comments, it's likely to provide some new options for other people to explore. We, in our home, we need some new things that are like for middle and high school level. We're all caught up on revisionist history, so we need some new stuff. But first, we do try to begin each episode with a weekly recap. We don't ever want you to finish listening to an episode and think, why can't I have my life together like Megan and Amanda? That is 100% not the vibe we're going for here. I promise you, we do not have our lives together. And of course, we have good days and weeks, but we also have crap days and seasons that we just cannot wait to say goodbye to. So, with that in mind, how's your week been, Megan?
It's been pretty good. My daughter, who is 17, just got back from the US. She went for a conference for advanced weavers, or not so much advanced in skill level, but people who are weaving more complex structures. So a pretty specific niche group of weavers, right? And anytime you go to a conference or anything like that, where you're in a space with all these other people who have a shared interest, and then you're attending seminars and you're kind of having these on the fly conversations in the lobby as you're passing through, and you're seeing somebody and they want to talk to you about a recent project you completed, and you've got questions for them about a project they completed. It's just such a great incubator of creativity and ideas and motivation. So she came back super duper jazzed. I did get some voice notes from her throughout the conference where she was rushing from one seminar to another and talking to me about some of the things that she was really focusing on while she was there and some of the things that she was learning. So that was exciting. But then when she came home, she gave me an even bigger digest on that particular focus. And it was so funny because as she was talking, I was thinking, this is not a small project. She does a lot of magazine articles. She contributes to other people's books and stuff like that. She's been published, I don't know, it's got to be coming up close to like 15, 20 times by now. And I was thinking, this is not one of these kind of smaller projects. In my head, I'm like, this is a book. You're talking about a book, girlfriend. And so it was so funny because at one point in the conversation, she was kind of hesitant to throw it out there. And she was like, I'm kind of thinking book. And I was like, ironic that you would say that because this is a book. What you're describing is 100% a book. So it was fun to get her back in this state of like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to go do all these new things and work on projects and collaborate with this one on this project and whatever. So that was good. But yeah. And then one of my kids discovered a platform called Science 3D. And we are huge documentary learners in our house. When my kids were younger, especially, we were huge unit study learners. I still have the utmost respect for unit study. I just love them. And Science 3D is basically those two things put together. So it's pretty cool. Whenever you listen to this, the price might not be the same, but we paid $49 for the year. It covers the whole family. And the amount of stuff that's in there is ridiculous. So it's these two guys that run it. One of them is an Emmy award-winning producer, and the other one is a PhD marine biologist, and he's a dean at Florida International University. And so they go out in the field. They'll go to Africa and study the West Nile crocodile, and they film these amazing Nat Geo quality documentaries that are lesson length. And then there's all these different PDF files in there that are complementary books and lessons and questions to be critically thinking. And we kind of discovered it at the perfect time where it's summertime and learning is a bit lighter. He has a less of a class schedule. And so he's just kind of been sucked into learning about canopy critters in Costa Rica and the West Nile crocodile and the great white shark and all these other, I mean, they're just, the videos are freaking amazing. I love a documentary, so I was happy. But yeah, so check it out if you haven't. I'll put it in the notes so don't be Amanda, go look at the show notes, because I think the website is not science3d.com. I think it's science3d.education. So I'll link it so that it makes it easier for you to find it. But yeah, and then my only other life update is a while ago on the podcast, I shared that I got a yoga mat and that I was going to do Adrian's 30-day yoga journey on YouTube, which I've done before, but it felt like a good way to get back into it. And then I had also downloaded the 14 Days to Sexy Arms, but far too close to sleeveless season for it to actually work because my arms needed a lot more than 14 days. And I haven't done a single day of yoga, and I've only done like 5 days of sexy arms. And so finally I just decided to join a gym because I'm like, maybe I need to actually leave my apartment and go somewhere to do the thing. But I might die because I'm like super out of shape. So if I'm not here next week and it's just Amanda and she's in all black, she looks like Scarlett O'Hara when at the ball, I died at the gym because yoga killed me. So, but yeah, we'll see how that goes. Maybe it'll go better than 30 days with Adrian. I mean, Adrian's program is great. It's me. I'm the problem. It's me. So yeah, anyway.
Hi, it's me. I'm the problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But yeah, how about you? What's new in your world?
I did not join a gym. I'm going to put that out there. But although along the same lines, I apparently really overdid it in May. I know the last few episodes I've talked about, I still just struggling. I'm tired, whatever. I am still really struggling with both a fibromyalgia and a chronic fatigue syndrome flare. I had to break out the TENS unit last week because my pain levels were just really bad. And I really needed it to be back under the cries from pain level of things. So it's creeping back up again, which is unfortunate. So yeah, that sucks. Thankfully, it hasn't been all bad days. There have definitely been good days where I can do things with my kiddo and all of us can go out together as a family. We recently did like a escape room that was on a college campus kind of thing. It wasn't a room, it was all over the campus and you had to find clues and solve puzzles and things like that. So like a
How
fun
fun.
random thing, yeah, to do together. It's just that those days are almost always followed by really rough days because that's how flares work and that's how PIM works. So I mean, yeah, if you have a chronic illness, you're sitting here going, yes, I wish people understood. It's a total roller coaster, literally. So yeah, I guess homeschooling wise, the kiddo is really enjoying summer, seeing more friends, playing more Pokemon tournaments, reading more. He just picked up the Da Vinci Code at a thrift store last weekend. And so he's been really getting into that and asking lots of questions and thinking about lots of things that I'm a little too tired to be thinking about with him. But, summer, yay. And then, yeah, he's still doing math and history and some investing and life skills lessons. It's been an interesting time to be learning about investing and the stock market and
Woo.
how much the president of the United States manipulates the stock market. It's great, great life lessons.
Let me just say, if I was Martha Stewart right now, I would be so fucking pissed, right? That out of all the people who do insider trading bullshit, that she's like the only person, and they made such a spectacle out of her. And now the president of the United States is like the master of insider trading.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Martha Stewart's like, I had to go to prison and knit a fucking poncho, and you get to be president. Like, what the hell? I can't.
Yeah. Patriarchy for the win.
Yeah, exactly.
I will also say that my kiddo is getting a crash course in entrepreneurship this summer because this week he is helping me prepare all of our pre-order books. So our big homeschool book officially launches the day that this episode airs. So it drops on June 23rd, Tuesday. And as the US based partner in this two-person business, I am in charge of pre-order fulfillment. So my life is a bit of a mess with book signing and shipping label mail merges and stuffing envelopes and labeling envelopes and sealing envelopes and really just all of the things right now to make sure that those signed pre-orders ship on Tuesday. Yeah, I have absolutely roped both my kiddo and my husband into helping me get it done. Husband not so excited about his entrepreneurship lessons. Kiddo slightly more open to it. I'm not going to lie. When I agreed to be the initial order fulfillment warehouse in my 2-bedroom condo, I thought we were talking like 20, maybe 25 pre-orders. I did not think it would be well over 100 books, which, look, I mean, it's cool. I can't sit here and complain that we sold too many books, but also someone stop me if I ever again agree to do this at some point in the future.
I'm just saying we need for our social media channels a picture of your smart car with 100 and whatever books on the way to the post office. I 100% need this photo to be able to share because it's going to be a situation. You're going to look like a Richard Scarry cartoon or something. It's going to be amazing.
It's very possible. It'll look like the apple with all the
Yeah.
things falling out of it. Yeah. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, when we drop off our huge toy donation thing, when we do a toy drive at the end of every year for a local nonprofit, and when we go to drop those toys off, we do it with the smart car, but it requires that my kiddo get into the car in the passenger seat and buckled in. And then I put boxes all around him and he holds a bunch of things because that's the only way we can fit it all in. I'm anticipating it's going to be a similar kind of thing. We'll see. We'll make it work.
Yeah, good times.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So podcasts, certainly something we know a bit about from an advice and how-to perspective. But today we'll be exploring podcasts as an educational medium for our kids.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's going to be good. Now, if you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, it will come as no surprise to you that I am a giant history nerd. So while we were planning for this episode, my wheels started turning about how podcasts came into existence and why, and when was the first one, and all the questions started forming. So I did the rabbit hole thing, and the story's pretty cool. So around 2000, 2001, there was a software developer named Dave Weiner who was working on RSS feeds, which I had never heard of until we had a podcast. But interestingly enough, it's been about 25 years since he was working on this thing. And we still use RSS feeds today to put our podcast out. We put our podcast into a repository, and then the RSS feed somehow magically through the power of the internet sends it to iTunes and Amazon Music and I don't know where else, Castbox and wherever you're listening, YouTube, Patreon, it goes to all these places through the RSS feed. So before podcasts, his purpose with the RSS feed was to allow written blogs to automatically send updates to subscribers. And this guy added a feature called enclosure, which sounds a whole lot like attachments. So I'm not sure why he didn't just call them attachments, but you could use this enclosure feature to attach a media file to your RSS feed. And that kind of paved the way for podcasts to exist. Now, at the same time, this guy, former MTV VJ Adam Curry, was experimenting with automatically downloading files, music files from the interwebs to his hot new technology, known as the iPod. So he was like, how can I get music automatically onto my iPod? And he created a software program that would go grab that audio from the RSS feed and put it on the iPod. So neither one of them set out to create the thing that podcasting is today. I don't think they knew each other from what I could tell from the research that I did. It wasn't like they were in cahoots to create this thing, but long story long, podcasting now exists. So I just thought that was super cool because I love to see how people's curiosity and their willingness to experiment changes technology and society really in new directions and unexpected ways. So fun story for the day. Now you know how podcasts came to be.
Yeah. I find that kind of stuff interesting. I like random facts. I had no idea. All right. So anyway, this gets us thinking. Podcasts are still a relatively new medium in the grand scheme of entertainment and education. Most of us grew up thinking of learning as something that happened through books, through lectures and worksheets and classrooms. Podcasts, those were often lumped into the entertainment category right alongside music and talk radio and other general road trip distractions. And look, I'm not going to lie, a lot of podcasts still fit there. But there's also a growing number of podcasts that are far more PBS programming than Entertainment Tonight programming. So this episode is going to be a bit like our graphic novel episode earlier this season. Because the thing is, not that long ago, graphic novels were widely dismissed as not real reading. But if you listen to that recent episode, you know that the research tells a much more nuanced story. And today, many educators recognize graphic novels as a legitimate and valuable way to engage with stories, ideas, and information. So we, as in Megan and I, know anecdotally that our kids love a good podcast. But the Homeschool Mom Unfiltered way is data-driven. When we talk about anything from play-based preschool to phonics instruction to, yes, podcasts, we don't want to show up and just say, well, this works for us, so surely it's good and you should do it too. We dig into the data and we'll link it in the show notes here for you, just so you can do more too. You can listen to us and then you can go to the show notes and dive in to the actual data that we use to inform this episode.
So our overall roadmap for today is to explore if there's a chance that we've been underestimating the educational value of podcasts simply because they don't look like traditional learning. Now, our first area of exploration for today is a comparison of listening and reading comprehension. And Amanda is the reading instruction whiz around here. If you want to talk about phonics curriculum or whatever else, you go book a session with Amanda. That's what she does. I don't do that thing. So I am totally going to toss it to her to get started for a couple of reasons. Number one, she was super duper excited for this episode topic. And number two, Amanda has a lot of strengths and skills and niche interests. Pronouncing names is not one of them. And we're not even just talking super unique ethnic names. We're talking all names. So the first study we're going to be looking at today was written by a Norwegian guy with a name that for us as Americans looks like alphabet soup. And I thought, this will be fun for Amanda. Let's get into this.
Yeah, this will be fun. It's like when you tell your kids, like, I know you hate it, but maybe it'll be better than you expect. Like, it's not going to be better than we expect. Yeah. Okay, so let's start. We're going to start with listening and reading comprehension because for many learners, the similarities are remarkable. So, all right, here we go. H.N. Hetland. Again, honestly, I have no idea if that's right. And I'm so sorry to him if I butchered it. But you can find the link again in the show notes. It is to the actual study with his name at least spelled correctly because even I can manage that. So anyway, he and his colleagues reviewed 64 longitudinal studies on preschool predictors of later reading comprehension. Their work supports the broader literacy finding, as in beyond preschoolers, that oral language skills, including listening comprehension and vocabulary are deeply connected to later reading comprehension. In other words, they determined that learning through your ears may have more in common with learning through your eyes than we tend to assume. So the authors concluded that listening and reading comprehension share many underlying cognitive processes. The research shows that when you listen to information, your brain isn't just passively absorbing sound. You are making connections, drawing conclusions, predicting what comes next, and building understanding, just like when reading. This should be a little intuitive for us. I mean, how often do we listen to things and realize that we are making connections? We talk all the time as homeschool parents and caregivers, yes, you can give it to kids, but a lot of times they get so much more out of the conversation afterwards, the discussions that you have. This kind of still plays on that. Comprehension is comprehension. Whether information enters through your eyes or your ears, your brain still has to make sense of it. Understanding a concept, identifying the main idea, remembering details, and connecting ideas happen from both forms, whether you read it or you hear it. The real learning happens after the words enter your brain. So decoding written words is different from hearing spoken words. We're not arguing that. But once the meaning is being processed in your brain, many of the same cognitive skills come into play. So listening is not a passive activity. We sometimes treat listening as less educational than reading. The research suggests that effective listening requires attention, interpretation, memory, and critical thinking. And look, this is not new to us. How many of us are like, you have to actually actively listen? These are the things that go into active listening. Active listening, it matters. It makes a huge difference in what you understand, what you retain. And also, it can be especially important for certain learners, for dyslexic learners, struggling readers, younger children, or learners with certain disabilities. Audio can remove barriers to accessing information. The learning itself may still be happening, often is still happening, even if the format looks different.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if your kiddo can explain the causes of the French Revolution after listening to a podcast, winning, hello, amazing. If they can debate the ethics of artificial intelligence after hearing an interview, that's awesome. If they can connect ideas from a science podcast that they listen to something that they're observing in the real world, that is evidence of learning. And the research suggests that we shouldn't dismiss it simply because it wasn't obtained through a more traditional medium. Like Amanda said, the human brain cares a lot more about whether you understood the information than whether it came through your eyeballs or your ear holes. A-okay. And honestly, this is a struggle for plenty of people. If you're struggling with this idea that listening to a podcast can be equivalent to reading a textbook, it might be worth sitting with that for a bit. It could be one of those places where a little additional deschooling is needed. It's an opportunity to recognize that learning doesn't have to look one way. And we talk about all the time that the flexibility of homeschooling is kind of the greatest thing about homeschooling. It gives us the freedom to re-examine what learning can look like. And we work with families all the time, whether it's in our online community or in coaching sessions, who chose to homeschool because there were certain aspects of the traditional school system or school approach that weren't working for their kiddo. But then completely inadvertently, they find themselves recreating those same expectations or systems at home because they're just so super duper ingrained in us. They're familiar, they're comfortable, they're what we've been told equals success later in life, and they're really hard to get rid of. So if you're stuck in that mindset, you're not alone. There's zero judgment from us. Even veteran homeschoolers have these knee-jerk moments sometimes where we're like, oh, they should be doing something productive. And then when you look at it, you're like, no, that's really damn productive. I'm just not recognizing it. I need to take a moment and process what's actually happening in front of my eyes. But second of all, come talk to us, come to a Patreon meeting, come to a coaching session. These patterns are surprisingly difficult to untangle. And that's what we do. We help families navigate that along with tons of other stuff on their journey. So like Amanda said before, if you go to our website, everything is there, but we would love to be able to help if you're struggling with some of those aspects of what counts as school and what is real serious learning, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, and I feel like if you're more of a traditional or academic homeschooler and a podcast feels like it pales in comparison to a history textbook, I'd challenge you to think about whether a lecture from a college history professor is educational or does it pale in comparison to a textbook.
Mhm.
Issues of quality aside, podcasts are really like unlimited access to university lectures. It's the ultimate university lecture series. All the topics, all the subjects, as many as you could possibly want to listen to, and for free. And again, don't worry, we'll talk more about finding quality podcasts later. But if a lecture is considered quality education in your mind, well, what's so different between a lecture and a podcast?
Well, I mean, you could go even deeper than that too into the history of oral storytelling. I mean, oral
Yeah.
storytelling is how people learn for centuries.
Yeah.
So we're doing that thing, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Okay, but back to the data. So from the last study, you might be thinking, okay, sure, Amanda, but you're talking about a study with preschoolers. How can you possibly extrapolate that to older kids, larger groups, and adults? Like, come on. And yes, we hear you. Okay, we have those same critical thinking skills. So we also reviewed a study by, again, I'm very sorry if I get your names wrong, Lean, Chin, Hellman, and Chan, which was conducted in 2018. The very concise title, a randomized comparative trial of the knowledge retention and usage conditions in undergraduate medical students using podcasts and blog posts.
Feels like the whole study is in the title. It's so long. It's like, is there anything in the body of the study at this point? But there is actually. Okay, so in this study, researchers randomly assigned students to learn the same material through either educational podcasts or written blog posts. And both groups had significant learning gains. There was really no statistical difference in the knowledge retention between the podcast group and the reading group. So yes, this goes beyond preschoolers, and this study confirms that we can reliably assume that students learned just as much from podcasts as they did from written material, that listening is a legitimate way to acquire new information, and that the education value probably depends more on the quality of the content as opposed to the format that you're absorbing it in. And like Amanda said, we'll talk about quality podcasts more as we continue.
Well, and this shouldn't be a huge surprise, especially if you listened to our episode on audiobooks. We did an entire episode on that. Audiobooks are real reading. But sometimes I think podcasts are just one step too far for a lot of people. And at least an audiobook, it's rooted in a book. Generally speaking, a book was created first, and then someone decided to turn it into an audiobook. A lot of really popular podcasts are the equivalent of an Us Weekly magazine. And look, as the academic aggressive homeschooler between the two of us, I'm not counting tabloids, even the more ethical ones, as quality learning opportunities. I mean, yes, even then, you can practice reading comprehension on stuff you find enjoyable, even if that is Who Wore It Best or celebrity gossip. But it is important to remember that there are truly loads of podcasts out there that go beyond that, that are really quality educational information or really get your kiddo thinking or just really dive into interests in a really quality way. Okay, so we know that listening isn't automatically a lesser way to learn. I mean, again, hello. Lectures and paid speakers have relied on listening for learning for literally centuries upon centuries. We know that understanding information can happen through multiple formats. And overall, it seems like the brain probably cares more about whether the information is understood than how it arrived at its destination. If we're talking specifically about reading comprehension, what does that look like when it comes to learning retention and audiobooks or podcasts?
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you asked because there happens to be a study.
No, I don't believe
Okay.
it.
Yes. Study. I'll mess up the names here too because A, they're challenging, and B, then you'll feel right in the mix. Okay. Study by P.B. Goff, not sure, and W.E. Tunmer. It's called Decoding, Reading, and Reading Disability. And they did note differences between reading and listening, which makes sense. They are two very different activities. So they stated that reading requires decoding in a way that listening does not. However, once those words are understood, many of the same comprehension processes, neurological processes are involved. So you're still making connections, drawing conclusions, building meaning, remembering information. And this study confirms for us what we say on our podcast often, but it's good to have validated studies that back it up. So it's not just us being like, this is what we think and take our word for it. But they confirm that listening is not passive, which I'm a huge audiobook girl and also have raging ADHD. And so there are plenty of times where I can confirm for you that listening is not passive because I kind of come to realizing I'm the good chapter beyond where I last comprehended anything going on in my book. My brain went on a journey someplace far, far away from the text of that book. And then I have to go back and figure out where I was and what the heck is going on here. And so, yeah, listening is not passive. You actively have to be engaged in the thing you're listening to. I can validate that for you all day long. This study also confirms that understanding spoken information requires attention and comprehension, that many of the same mental processes are involved in both listening and reading. And again, that once comprehension processes are activated, the retention is similar.
Yeah. And look, we are not sitting here saying, oh, don't teach your kids to decode words. They don't need to be able to decode and read. That's not what we're saying. Okay. Stick with us. We understand there are differences. We're not advocating one over the other. We're advocating both. The idea is once you take in the information, the comprehension processes are pretty similar, which also means retention is going to be pretty similar. If the process up to retention is about the same, then retention is going to be about the same. Again, assuming we're talking about learning styles and taking all of that into consideration. I know I always loved a good lecture in college. I personally really liked it when I would have a class where the professor covered everything from the textbook during the lecture and like writing it on the whiteboard. For me, that meant I rarely had to crack open the textbook. Sometimes I didn't even buy it, which was a real money saver when I was in university. My husband loves a good TED Talk. My kiddo loves both a good lecture and a good TED Talk. So it's no surprise that he loves podcasts. All of that said, we mentioned it before, it is important to not forget the accessibility factor when it comes to listening versus reading. For some learners, audio isn't just a preferred learning style or a convenient way to take in information. It is freedom. It's liberating. It's their chance to actually access it. It's the key to unlocking information otherwise unavailable to them. A dyslexic learner may be fully capable of understanding complex ideas, but if they spend so much mental energy decoding the text, the actual content gets lost along the way. Audiobooks and podcasts can remove that barrier and provide direct access to information. The same can be true for learners with visual impairments or certain processing disorders, chronic illnesses that make reading difficult, or even kids who simply focus better while moving their bodies. If you need to be riding a bicycle or jumping on a trampoline or even just wiggling all over the place and you're trying to hold the book and read this tiny font, it's not going to work. In those cases, listening isn't a shortcut. It's an accommodation that allows learning to happen. I was just watching a video earlier today from I think the content creator is Doug Weaver Art or something like that. He's in St. Louis. I really enjoy him. If you don't follow him, you should go check him out. But he was talking about America's literacy crisis. And he was saying his literacy crisis started when he was in kindergarten. He read a sentence and was like, nope, didn't get it. Read the sentence again, was like, know all the words, didn't understand all the words together. They just didn't work. And it's that idea. He was talking about how in all of his videos, he makes sure to include captions because he understands that different people need to get things in different ways. And for him, it's most helpful for him to be able to hear it and read it at the same time. But he understands that different people need to access information in different ways. And it's so important. As homeschoolers, we have this unique ability to focus on that and provide different input modalities that brick and mortar schools can't do.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was nodding along the whole time you're talking because I am parenting kids who have multiple factors of what you were just talking about not being able to sit still and hold a book, and about being able to read a sentence beautifully off a piece of paper and then have no concept of what it says when they're done. Yeah. So one of my kiddos has a visual processing challenge. Again, reads beautifully, the intonation, the inflection, you're like, oh, the passion, it's beautiful. Spoken word, it's amazing. Afterwards, they're like, I don't know what I said. What did I say? I have no clue. So if that kiddo cracks open a book and sees a solid wall of text on both the left and the right pages, their immediate thing is like, holy shit, like there's no way I'm getting through this. But that same kiddo loves magazines. So in a magazine, you usually have different fonts or different sizes, different colors. You've got a ton of pictures in the mix. Sometimes you have advertisements in the mix as well that kind of break up the block text. The columns are filtered differently. You have a lot more white space. Sometimes you have a call out box with a related tangent topic related to the article. And so all of that makes it so much less visually intimidating to take that on if your brain processes information differently. And so I could totally see where podcasts would also be helpful for someone like that. There's a meme that floats around where one person says to this other person, you want to watch an 8-hour movie? And the other person is like, no, why would I want to watch an 8-hour movie with you? And then they're like, okay, well, do you want to binge watch this new series on Netflix? And yeah, the new series on Netflix happens to be 8 one-hour episodes, and they're going to spend their whole Saturday doing this. So basically, they've just watched an 8-hour movie, but it feels so much less intimidating to watch 8 one-hour episodes where you've got a break and maybe you take the dog for a walk or you make a meal in between than watching an 8-hour movie. And I feel like podcasts can have that same psychological effect for kids who might feel overwhelmed when they download a book that's a 15-hour audiobook. And you've got that little status bar at the bottom moving along, telling you what percentage of the way you are through the book. And you're like, 4%, 5%. And you're like, I've been listening to this freaking forever and I'm not even at 10% yet. Even if they're enjoying it, psychologically, it can still feel very different. It can feel like watching an 8-hour movie. So the idea that you can get into these podcasts and they're shorter and they're more bite-sized, I feel like could be helpful psychologically for some kids, depending on the way they perceive content, the way they receive content. It could work really well for plenty of kids.
Well, yeah, I'm going to say I'm an adult and I'm not downloading a 15-hour audiobook. Like it's not happening. No, I read a lot of serialized stories on like those apps, and it's not uncommon for a story to be 300-400 chapters. So
Well,
yes, I realize that if it was an audiobook, it would be like 15 hours long, but I cannot. No, if I went to download it and it said it was that, I'm like, no, I'm out. Not for me, dog. No, thank you. All right. So listen, did you catch that? I cracked myself up. Okay. But seriously, we aren't suggesting that podcasts are a replacement for reading. It's not. Reading does develop some skills that listening just can't, or other skills that it may not develop as effectively. The goal doesn't have to be choosing one over the other, but they are a great option to mix in, particularly when we stop treating them as just extra and recognize them as a legitimate educational tool. They offer flexibility, portability, convenience. They're easy to incorporate into everyday life. You can learn while walking the dog, while folding laundry or driving, exercising, assuming you survive yoga class, booking dinner, cooking dinner. I mean, I might book dinner, let's be real, but DoorDash. Enjoying a hobby from crafting to painting to Lego building. My kid listens to podcasts when he's Lego building. Sometimes he listens to podcasts while he's writing a book. My brain cannot do that, but you
Yeah, I couldn't
can,
do that.
yeah, you can listen to a podcast while you're doing other things, and it can still be informative and educational and expanding your horizon and giving you something to noodle about and think about.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. So we got together with our respective kiddos and put together a list of popular podcasts in our households. I will put out a disclaimer to say that I've really never screened content for my kids, as evidenced by the time we were on a road trip and my 5-year-old was asking us questions about electrified fences. And my husband was like, what the hell is he listening to? And he was listening to something about the Nuremberg trial. My husband was like, what the hell is going on here? I was like, he's enjoying it. It's okay. He's interested. Leave him
He's
alone. He's
learning.
fine. Yeah, exactly. So if any of these are wildly inappropriate based upon your family standards, please don't come for me. If you are a screener, screen my suggestions before just tossing them out to your kids. But yeah. What'd you get from your kiddo, Amanda?
Okay, well, I'm going to start kind of from youngest to oldest in my Rex. And I'll start by saying Molly of Denali. Now, it is a cartoon type show. So if you're fine with screen time, that's great. If you're not crazy about screen time, they have the shows as a podcast where there's no active cartoon images along with it. You can just listen to it. So that's an option. Wow in the World has been incredibly popular in our home. We have the books. We listen to it on repeat. Brains On is another one that gets played almost as much as Wow in the World. I wish I didn't know their theme songs, but alas, I do. Bedtime History. I did not know that my kiddo enjoyed this one so much. Apparently, he listens to it quite often and he highly recommends it. So there you go, Bedtime History. Homeschool History was one that I really liked. Now, this is Homeschool History, the one put out by BBC Three, I believe it was. And they did it. It's only got maybe 2 seasons. They put it out during the pandemic, but
Mm.
it's really good bite-sized snippets of history, 10, 15-minute episodes, random topics for sure, but great to listen to together and talk about. And then he really highly recommends Live from Mount Olympus. That is one for me that's good for kind of all ages. If you've got a kiddo that's interested in mythology, it can be a quite young kiddo up to a teen or a tween, really. And then ones that, in my opinion, are still generally appropriate language wise and the stuff they cover, generally fine, but maybe critical thinking, comprehension skills wise, more appropriate for older tweens and teens would be revisionist history, hugely popular in our home. My kiddo has listened to all of them at least once. That's the series that's by Malcolm Gladwell. So if you liked his style of investigating things, The Tipping Point and Revenge of the Tipping Point and those kinds of things, that's his. Although I found his books, while the topics were interesting, I found them a little hard to enjoy reading. The podcast is much more accessible and really good, I think. So definitely a good one, especially good for family road trips so that you can all talk about it. And it's not like, oh my gosh, if I have, I know Megan really liked children's music. We talked about that on the podcast before. She was happy to put that shit on in her car. That's not me. So I'm definitely more of a like, let's listen to revisionist history as a family and talk about it instead of let's listen to Wow in the World as a family and talk about it. And then on our list to listen to in the coming year, we haven't done it yet, but I've heard great things, is the preamble by Sharon Says So. I know that's not her actual name, but that's her social media handle. So that's what we're going to go with.
I like it. Yeah. Okay, so I did not organize mine completely I kind of organized them by age, I guess, actually. So my kids are older teens at this point. So some of these things they're not still listening to. Some of these they enjoyed when they were younger and they look back upon fondly. Things like Smash Boom Best, which is a debate focused podcast. My youngest child was super duper into that. He was also taking a bunch of debate classes. This is a child who should probably not be taking debate classes just for my own sanity because he's already pretty good at debating. And then we gave him a podcast and some classes to sharpen his debate skills. My husband was like, this is self-sabotage. Why are we doing this? And I was like, because he's enjoying it and he's into it. So let's cultivate that. So he loved that one, Freaking Out, which is a super popular one. So a lot of people have probably heard of it. But there's also a Nat Geo focused Freaking Out that mixes in more world history content. So that's pretty cool. A World Without, if I had to guess, I think this one has some language in it. I'm pretty sure the hosts of this one are British as well. Because for a while when my youngest kiddo was quite young, he was listening to it because his older brother was, he was using words like zebra because he had picked up. He was like Madonna for a while where he had a British accent out of nowhere. And I was like, all right then.
Can I just say, I had this with my husband for the longest time. He was calling it like Tesla. And I was like, it is not Tesla. But he was listening to all of these British car shows. And that's how they always pronounce it. There's always the end at it. You know, like when I lived in England, I was Amander. And I was like, it's Amanda. It's not that complicated. Like it's duh. So yeah, I feel that pain. I understand that.
I mean, he's almost 15 now, and he still all the time goes, what are you on about? Which is so British. But it's because he consumes so much British content that he's got all these different British slang and pronunciations that just kind of randomly come out. And I'm just like, all right, then.
What are you on about? Give me the aluminium. All right. I just need aluminium.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. I know. My daughter busted out courgette the other day. So yeah. But A World Without takes a random object or concept, one in every episode, and imagines a world without that thing. So one time it was a world without circles. And then they go through a gazillion different scenarios of what the world would be like if there were no circles. And my kiddo loves to kind of needle things and take them apart. And so that type of thinking is just all him. He loves that stuff. So there's Ologies, which is a science podcast. And I actually didn't know until I was researching for this episode that it's an adult podcast, but apparently there's a kid-friendly version of the same podcast called Smologies. No one in my house has ever listened to that, but maybe check that one out if you have younger kids. But Ologies is pretty in-depth science. So that's pretty cool. My daughter actually got that from a tutor that she had worked with for a little while, and he has a master's in education and is a biologist. That's his bachelor's, I think. So if he's recommending it, I'm like, it's solid science. So Stuff You've Missed in History Class is just a great way to go back and relearn history that we were never taught properly because it was all super whitewashed and Eurocentric and made up. Rebel Girls, they have the books. So you might be familiar with Rebel Girls. So the original Rebel Girls book came out and it was cool. It would have one girl or young woman. I don't know that it had adult women in it. It's been a long time since I've looked at Rebel Girls, but you'd have Malala in there and Ruby Bridges and stuff like that. They have since put out other books, and I love how inclusive their books are, where they've got one on rebel girls who were immigrants and things like that. So love that. My only complaint about Rebel Girls is that they oftentimes don't go deep enough. So I teach a lot of feminist history on OutSchool. And sometimes I would have students who would come to me and they could recognize Malala, her picture, but they didn't know that the Taliban had shot Malala. They just knew that she wanted girls to learn, and isn't that great? And I was like, you can't really teach that. I was teaching it to 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds through a lens of religious extremism and all of this. Like, you can do that in an age appropriate way. So I feel like Rebel Girls fall short in that sense. So if you're going to dig into that podcast, I would supplement the shit out of it. But anyway, Who Did What Now is an adult podcast, but it's done by a woman, British. So your child can develop a British accent if you'd like that to be one of the features of your life. But she's a historian and I think a sociologist. And so she does amazing content and just her storytelling abilities and her energy, and love her. 99% Invisible. It's very similar to A World Without. So if you have a kid who likes one, they might like the other. I have no clue if it's got language in it because I didn't listen to it from that perspective. So the whole focus is hidden stories behind everyday things. And one day my kids had one on that was about doors. Why do some doors push and some doors pull? The psychology of design behind doors. So just really random stuff that people like to dig into and do these kind of rabbit hole things. My last suggestion is probably not one that Amanda would give 5 stars to because we read a book by the same author and it wasn't her favorite. It's by Blake Bowles, who runs Unschool Adventures, and he had written a book called Better Than College. He has now written a book called Dirtbag Rich, and the podcast comes from the interviews that he conducted while writing Dirtbag Rich, and he turned it into a podcast. And the basic concept is these are all people who've chosen to live life in a very, very minimalist way, where they are not getting a mortgage and a car and a this and a that. They're kind of vagabonding and woofing and couch surfing and going on a 2-month hike down this amazing coastal trail in Spain. And this is their life. And they are productive members of society. They make money, they support themselves, they survive, but they are not out to have the big career and all the things that most people in society either want or think they want based upon what they're told. And so, yeah, we like that one. We thought it was good. It's been helpful for my oldest kiddo who kind of leans in that low-key minimalist sense. And he knows Blake. He's been on unschool adventure trips with Blake to Greece and Turkey and Germany. And he'll be at Not Back to School camp this summer, mentoring teens and all kinds of stuff. So we like that one as well. But yeah. Phew. Okay. What a deep dive for the day. Love it. Super fun. I mean, who doesn't love a good rabbit hole about how the brain receives and processes information and the history of podcasts? Good stuff.
I mean, gestures wildly around the internet. I think plenty of people don't, but the fact that we do is what makes us perfect candidates to homeschool our kids, I would say.
Good point. Valid point. Yeah. All right, friends. So share the podcast that your kids love in the comments. If we can get a really nice, healthy list going, we'll make it available as a free resource over on Patreon that everybody can go download. And that way you can keep finding new ones and keep learning fresh and curiosity alive with your kiddos. So yeah, comment. We would love to see them. But for now, we will end our episode as we always do with our mantra. And this week's mantra is: the goal was never to raise kids who consume information in one specific way. The goal is to raise lifelong learners who never stop seeking information. Yeah. Good stuff. So yeah, thanks for tuning in today. We hope our conversation offered some fresh perspective, some data. If you love data as much as we do, go read the full study if you want to. The links are in the show notes. And hopefully opened up some new pathways for learning through podcasts and other mediums that might not be traditional or as widely accepted, but have a lot to offer on our homeschool journey. So yeah, thanks for joining us and happy homeschooling.
Yeah, have a great one.